You make no friends in the pits and you take no prisoners. 1 minute you're up 500,000 in soybeans and the next, boom.
Do
Kids
not
don't go to college and
attempt
they
to
resist
adjust
to
your
that.
device.
The revolution starts now.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Turn those machines back on!
You are about to enter the halls of justice.
Show me the money!
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
This is the halls of justice. He is your host, Justus.
Well, folks, welcome to the big show. And I gotta say, the Purge is here. This is the Purge. Our last podcast got age restricted by YouTube, and that's not a new thing for our show. Usually what happens is within seconds of uploading a new podcast, YouTube must have an algorithm or something that they flag our show every time, and they age restrict it. They send me an email within a minute of it being uploaded to their servers. Luckily, up until last week, I was always able to, in the email, they have a appeal link. I was able to appeal it. There's no vulgarity, and there's nothing that violates their community standards. But last week, they flagged it. I appealed it, and simply got a message back that said, appeal rejected. There was no place to appeal the appeal. There was no place to get more information on what was flagged that could not be appealed. Just appeal rejected right there. You're done. Just like that. That was just the beginning of all this. That actually took place before the events at the Capitol building took place. That took place before Twitter banned everybody. We were already getting flagged. And then, I don't even know where to start. I got Fat Man with me. I guess we'll just start kind of how it happened was within an hour of us ending our taping of the podcast last week, a group of, I don't know what to say other than protesting rioters broke into the Capitol building. I have no idea what they were hoping they would accomplish, but when I look at the big picture, what they accomplished was putting the Republicans and President Trump back into a hole that I don't know that we will ever dig out of at this point. What do you think?
I think you're the same, I do not scare easily. But these are very scary times. And I don't mean cower in the corner kind of scary. I mean, where are we going? I don't care if you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, if you're an independent. I don't care if you don't even know what politics are and don't pay any attention. One thing we all have to be extremely protective of is free speech. And right now, free speech is under attack.
Yeah. So
the problem we have here, the problem we have here is half of the country doesn't realize it. They're just happy because of the target. And I've been trying to get people to forget about what the target is. That's fine. We get it. You hate President Trump. But what you have to understand here is the net result is not getting rid of Trump. It's limiting free speech. And that should terrify every person in this country.
Yeah, so after the attack on the building, it was just like dominoes falling. So Facebook banned President Trump. Twitter banned President Trump. And it didn't stop there. So Facebook or Twitter's began removing users. And if you are any sort of a Republican, any sort of a conservative, then chances are at some point you are going to get removed by Twitter. James Woods has lost almost 1 million followers virtually overnight because Twitter just decides to remove these people. And the scary part is, as you said, is people, the ones that hate Donald Trump are good with this. They don't care. They welcome this. But I think what else is going on is there's people on the fence like, I didn't really like Donald Trump. Okay, but this doesn't affect me, so I don't care. I don't even think it has to be just an all-out never Trumper. I think just regular folk who this doesn't affect at the moment don't get the picture of what is truly happening here. You have big tech, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have Apple, you have Google. You have all these companies that are now aligning together to only let information out that they want let out and to suppress information that they don't agree with at this point. And this is a slippery slope. This has really annoyed me all week. I've sent you several text messages like, I'm getting madder and madder. But this is a dangerous, slippery slope. And if you don't think they're coming for you, then you're wrong, because they are going to come for you.
Ronald Reagan famously said, and it's paraphrasing a little bit, but making a deal with the government is like making a deal with a crocodile to eat you last. Eat you last, he will, but he will eat you. And that's what people are doing right now. They are saying, hey, as long as they're eating the other guy, I don't have to worry about it. They're only limiting conservative speech. We're on the right team here. We're on the right side of history. They're not going to limit my speech. But at some point, they run out of Republicans. They run out of conservatives, but they're still hungry. It's the same thing as when they say, we're only going to tax the rich. And then you start doing the math. And you look at statistics, it'll show you if they tax the rich at 100%, they still couldn't pay for what they're accomplishing, because a government never gets tired of taxing people and stealing wealth. They never get tired of it. And the same thing, it's insatiable. They will never get tired of limiting rights and limiting free speech, freedom of religion, freedom to own a gun. They will never stop trying to take away your rights. And that's what the founding fathers knew would happen, because they had seen it. They had seen it with kings. Limiting the populace and their ability to have freedoms is how they kept everybody in line. And this is kind of reverting back that direction. And look, when we talked about conspiracies in the last podcast, and I'm not saying that, tomorrow we're going to wake up in the Soviet Union. But when you start easily giving up your rights because it's only penalizing the other guy, eventually you're going to be the other guy. And you talked about big tech. You're talking about competitors who are now in bed with each other because of the greater good. They desperately want to limit conservatism. They desperately wanted to stop the limitation that the 230C gives them as far as being responsible for what they do. The Republicans, near the end of Trump's term late last year, the Republicans and Trump leading it started floating that idea of taking away big tech's ability to block freedom of speech, because is it 230C or 203C? 230C, I think it is. But it makes it so they cannot be a publisher. If you're a publisher, you're under different laws. Like the New York Times or any newspaper is a publisher. They can decide what goes in and out of their newspaper. If you're a publisher, there's certain responsibilities. Big tech and things like Facebook and Twitter have said, we're not publishers. And that's how they've skirted around the issue. And the big thing about not being a publisher is you can't limit. Now, you can certainly have some guidelines. It's just like you can't scream fire in a crowded theater. You can have some limitations on things like that. But when those limitations go down to simple quotations, and those words being interpreted or spun the way you want them to be, that changes everything about you being a publisher. And you simply can't do it. And one of the quotes that I'm specifically talking about is something that the president said. And I was having some debates this morning about this exact quote. And all the president said in his tweet was that he was not coming to the inauguration. Twitter classified that as verbiage that would incite violence. The President of the United States says he's not coming to the next president's inauguration, and that sentence incites violence. I'm not seeing a call to action in those words. Not at all. If you see it in there, if you read it in there, please explain to me where the call to action is. Now, we can get into it. And there's so many things that you started the show with. There's so many things to unpack here. But I am one of the people that didn't like President Trump's speech last week. He didn't tell them to go break into the Capitol, but I didn't like the speech. I think it was a low point for his presidency. I understand the message that he was trying to get across. I think he could have done it so much better. I think he went directions he didn't have to go, and it still would have garnered the same amount of support from his followers. And obviously, I'm totally against them breaking into the Capitol and what happened there. But these are two totally different issues. You've got what went on last week, and you've got what's going on since then with freedom of speech being taken away. And we have got to be extremely careful with where we're going right now. Slippery slope doesn't even begin to scratch the surface on where we're at right now with freedoms.
So, maybe you have an answer to this. I know you have an opinion on this. So Twitter bans Trump, right? How is it that they can keep the accounts of the Iranian Ayatollah, Louis Farrakhan, the Chinese propagandists, the Communist Party? How come those aren't banned? I mean, all of those, every one of those, if you've ever looked at them, daily they are encouraging assaults. Daily they are. But yet, because it must fit their narrative, those accounts remain active. They're active to this day.
It's funny that you phrased that question the way you did, that I would have an opinion on it, because I have an opinion on everything. But honestly, I don't on this. And the reason I say it that way is because there's no accurate, there's no fair, there's no honest opinion on that being the case. And I thought about that exact thing this morning. The president of Iran can come out and say, we're going to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. We're going to kill President Trump. And he said that last week. He said, how did he say it? President Trump will be, nothing but dust or something next week, in a few days. But it was slightly veiled, but there was no question it was a threat. North Korea said late last week, because now he's coming back into play because Trump is gone. He said that we might have to, go to war with the United States. And again, you can twist those words, but just read the tweet, and it says that they're ready to go. But those guys can still be on Twitter. But the president of the United States says he's not going to the inauguration, and that's hate speech. That's banned speech. I mean, think about that for a second. We've got the most popular person on one of the most popular social media platforms, if not the most popular social media platform in the entire world, and he's banned. The president of the United States' words can't be shared with the people.
Yeah,
I haven't, honestly. I know I spoke, but there is no way to analyze that scenario. There just isn't.
So now, if I were anybody more than just the guy broadcasting to tens of people, and I said publicly, hey, let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. If you see anybody from the Democratic cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gas station, you get out and you create a crowd and you push back on them and you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere. We've got to get the children connected with their parents. If I said that, do you think that would be encouraging violence? Encouraging you to go up to any Democratic cabinet member anywhere. Do you think that would be encouraging violence? I'm kind of egging you on, right?
It depends. If you're crazy Maxine and you're standing there doing it, it's fine. If you're Donald Trump or any other conservative, it's hate speech.
Right. But see, all it is it's one word difference. If it's Democratic, it's okay. If it's Trump, it's not okay. But when I look at it, just looking at it, I would say this equates to the same thing. It's the same lines. You're encouraging confrontation is exactly what you're doing. But yet nothing was done to Maxine Waters when she encouraged her supporters to harass Trump administration officials.
The problem is we can point to Maxine Waters saying that, but this isn't something new. This all goes back to do as I say, not as I do. You can look back over the entire Trump presidency and look at some of the comments that were made. And this isn't by, Joe the grocer, Bill the banker, Susie the plumber made these comments. We're talking about people, look at some of the things that Omar has said. Look at some of the things that AOC has said. Nancy Pelosi, Schumer. If you get to the point where all you have to do for something to be considered, and I've always hated the term hate speech. I've always hated the term hate crimes. And we're finding out exactly why I've always held that position, because now you're looking for somebody to interpret words or meaning or what's in somebody's head. A lot of times we hear President Trump's a racist. He might be. He might be. I have no idea. Now, my gut feeling is, before our tens of listeners, want to burn me at the stake, I don't think he is. But some people do. But the only person that knows if he's a racist or not is him. So when we start giving people the power to absolutely say this person is this person is that, and these words are no longer acceptable, we've given someone too much power. And what this is, Justice, is this is an end run around the Constitution, because a lot of people don't understand, they'll yell, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Well, freedom of speech doesn't apply to you and me having a conversation. If you limit my freedom of speech, you haven't violated my right to freedom of speech. The freedom of speech is so the government doesn't stop you from your right to freedom of speech. Basically, what big tech has done is they've gone around the Constitution. Because how many of us communicate now via social media? How many of us rely on Google as our forms of communication, our forms of news? So when you start limiting people's ability to participate in those forums, you start limiting the type of information that flows through those forums, you've now suppressed freedom of speech, even though it's not, quote, the government suppressing the free speech. It is, because big tech and the Democratic Party is, whether you want to admit it or not, it's now the same thing. So this really is an end run around the Constitution and to limit freedom of speech. And like I said earlier, this has got to be a terrifying moment. People need to wake up. You've got Donald Trump, okay? You've got him. He's not going to be your president in 2 more weeks. Let that happen, okay? Then let's start rebuilding. Your number one target is going to be out of the picture. He's no longer president. But freedom of speech is supposed to last forever, regardless of who's in the White House or who's in Congress. And right now, for a little bit of a victory, for a little bit of a feel-good that you get from getting big, nasty orange man you're willing to give up your freedom of speech. There's a reason freedom of speech is first and the Second Amendment is second. And I think we're seeing why. And this is a bigger picture thing. I think this is all connected. And I don't want to, just babble on here, but I think this is all connected. You start limiting freedom of speech. You start taxing ammunition. You start limiting the ability for people to defend themselves. You bring in, Beto O'Rourke, and he takes away your AR-15s. And now you anything that's a high capacity magazine, you can't have that. And what's high capacity? 6. Okay, well, you just eliminated about every semi-automatic pistol that's out there. So these are the types of things. This is all connected. And as much as I hate to sound like a conspiracy wacko, I'm really afraid about the big picture here.
So, if we're going down that way, well, first of all, let me give you this other quote, and then I'll give you my thoughts on that. See if you can name the person who gave this quote, and this was perfectly okay. I need you to go out and talk to your friends and talk to your neighbors. I want you to talk to them, whether they're independent or whether they're Republican. I want you to argue with them and get in their face. And I'll give you a hint. It happened in 2008. So who do you think would have said that in 2008?
Well, that sounds like a Barack Obama statement to me.
And you're correct. So the man who I credit with beginning and being the most divisive president in history is the one that gave that exact quote. Get in their face. Get in your neighbors' faces. So anyway, that was a sidetrack. You talked about the Second Amendment, and so Joe Biden's plan to end gun violence, as he announced just yesterday, the day before, he's promising to, in his words, defeat the NRA during his term. So we've spoke on this on prior podcasts, prior episodes. First they come for your speech, then they come for your guns, and I guess what's after that? They come for you? Are we all going to end up in the FEMA camps, in the tents? Are the trains coming? We're going the wrong way for history here. This has happened before, and now it's happening again.
And the problem is when you start speaking like this, people look at you like you're crazy. And I'll be honest with you, I used to be one of those people that when somebody had this major conspiracy theory or this wacko put the tinfoil hat on. And again, we talked a little bit about some conspiracies about the moon landing, and that was kind of a fun way to wrap up the last show. But this is a different scenario, and sometimes you got to realize what's going on around you. You can't stand there in a rainstorm and be wondering why I'm getting wet. There's a reason you're getting wet. Well, there's also a reason that people are very angry and very upset about what's going on in the country right now. At our peril, we ignore protests. Honestly, I think we can all agree with what happened with Black Lives Matter last year, and Antifa was too far. I think most people who are open to thought and open to discussion can acknowledge we need to have a discussion about race. I think you also look at race relations have gotten a lot better in the last 100 years. Are we there yet? They're not. We're not there. We've got some work to do. But by burning down cities, that didn't help anybody's cause. But that doesn't mean there isn't a cause there. Okay? Same thing is going on right now. These idiots who decided to break into the Capitol, they went too far. But that doesn't mean the 10,000 people, 50,000 people, 100,000 people. I haven't actually heard what the number was on how many people were actually outside. But they have a point. So even if you want to discredit the people who broke into the Capitol, and they should be, even if you want to discredit the people who burned down buildings this summer, and you should. Both of those have merit to an argument, to a discussion we need to be able to have. You could have one side of the one viewpoint, somebody else can have another viewpoint, but we need to have that discussion. And when you start eliminating, if you start taking away one side of that argument or one side of that discussion, one side of that debate, if you take away their ability to participate in that debate, what do you have left? You have one party rule, you have one thought rule, and you have a very, very dangerous situation. And you also have something that isn't the United States of America. And it doesn't have anything to do with Donald Trump. It has to do with who's looking back at you when you look in the mirror.
Yeah, I don't agree with the violence that took place over the summer. When I sit back and I look at it, I think it should have, the protests were good. That should open some eyes. That should raise some channels of communication. That should signal that something is not right here. When you start burning down the neighborhoods, when you start committing acts of violence towards persons, then it's a riot. And at that point, you've pretty much lost all credibility in what you were trying to do that day. And what we found a lot of times is when people got arrested at these riots, they weren't from the city that the riot was in. They weren't, a lot of times, even from that state. These people were trucked in, they were bussed in, they were paid and bought and paid for. They found trucks full of bricks. They found trucks full of fireworks. This stuff was set up long in advance. And the people of the communities who were trying to get the word out, while it was inconveniencing some people during their protests, they were trying to go about it the right way. The agitators that were bought and paid for, that instigated the violence as nightfall came most of the time, are the people that put a blanket on the whole thing. The same thing happened at the Capitol building. Anywhere Donald Trump spoke, everybody knew there would be thousands and thousands of people. He's proven that. He didn't have to sit in his basement. He could go out, and there would be thousands and thousands of followers there. Are some of them probably crazy and have the hat on too tight? Absolutely. You know, I can't argue with that. Just like in any crowd, are 10% of the people going to be nuts? Most likely. I've watched the videos. I'm not saying Antifa was there. I'm not saying they weren't, but I watched the videos. And if you watch the pattern between the summer protests and this protest, you have people in black hoodies going up to the barricades. At one point, one of the people in the black hoodies turns his MAGA hat around backwards. And then all of a sudden, there's a simultaneous attack on that barricade. Like it's a signal. Now, I'm pretty sure that was a plan right off the rip. Just me being the let's look at this and see what we can see kind of guy. Then you see these exact same two people are the first people that are trying to break into the building by breaking the windows and breaking the doors out. And then once the breach is accomplished, they back off. They don't even go in. You see, they have agitated the crowd to the point where they got them to do the dirty work after that was done. Was it Antifa? I don't know. Was it crazy Trump supporters? The fringe, the lunatic fringe? Again, I don't know. But the point is, if you're going to condemn the violence that took place at the Capitol building, then you better condemn the violence that took place during the summer. They both started off on the right ideas, and they both went too far. So you can't be okay with one and not the other. That's the way I see it.
What I've seen multiple times on social media is exactly what you're saying. When this all broke down right after we wrapped up the podcast last week, the first thing I said is this needs to stop, and I condemn what they're doing at the Capitol. I'm all for protest. I supported the people's right to protest earlier this year. I didn't support their right to burn down cities. I supported the people who were in Washington. I didn't support the crazies who broke into the building, because there's a line that you cross, and they both crossed the line. And what I was very disheartened about is, even though right out of the gate I said I condemn what's going on, and I was hoping it would be a little bit of an olive branch to people who were on the other side of the political arena to join me and say, yeah, burning down cities was wrong, breaking into the Capitol was wrong. Can't we stop looking at things right and left and just look at things right and wrong? Breaking into the Capitol, wrong. Burning down cities, wrong. It's very simple when you keep it simple. Now, we can make this all complicated and go into so many different levels, and you can get lost in a quagmire of the details. But I think one thing, to your point, we have to look at, because of the similarities, and I actually had a family member who said she was front row at the Trump rally on Wednesday in Washington. And it's funny you mentioned, because you and I had not talked about this, but it's funny you mentioned the hat being turned around. She mentioned that she thought it was Antifa, and she was there. That still doesn't mean she 100% knows what's going on, but she was there. It's firsthand information in her eyes. But she said she saw a number of people with the MAGA hats turned backwards. And it seemed to be that the people with the hat backwards were people that were working in concert together. They almost had a second language. They had hand signals. And then when all of this started to go down, and you saw this with the Black Lives Matter protests as well, if we want to be fair, the Trump supporters who were there just to support the president and to let their voice be heard tried to stop the people with the hats backwards. They tried to stop them from breaking into the Capitol. They tried to stop the violence. There were actual Trump supporters trying to stop it. You saw the same thing this summer in a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests, where people came out and said, I remember crying one time watching this guy on television, him and a couple of his friends who had stopped Antifa from burning down the only grocery store in this particular neighborhood. And he said, I'm not going to let you burn down my grocery store. This is where my family gets our food. We can't get our food anywhere else but here, and you're not burning it down. So there were good people on both sides, to purposely use that phrase. In the summer, there were good people in Washington, D.C. But if you look at the commonalities that you just mentioned about something as simple as the reversed hats, who benefits from all of this mess? Who benefits from all of this happening? I think it's fair to say George Soros has his hand in here. I think big tech has their hand in here. And as sad as I am to say it, and this is just my opinion, I think the Democratic Party has their hand in this, because they want Trump and his believers and the freedom fighters that are behind Trump, they want them eliminated. Not just beat down, eliminated.
Yeah, and right before you even said Soros, I was about to tell you, well, maybe this is one of the cases where we need to follow the money, because he's been tied to this kind of stuff. He's, as an open hatred for the United States, he's just been kicked out of so many countries before that this is where he is. And now I think you're starting to see the marriage of maybe the politicians really have no power. I mean, if we want to go down this rabbit hole, if you have enough money like George Soros, you could buy Antifa, you can make whoever you want look bad, and then if you can marriage that now with the companies that seem to almost provide your essential air for the day, and that being Google, that being Facebook, that being Twitter, and if you marriage your money with big tech, then there's nothing that you couldn't do, whether you wanted the Democratic Party to succeed or fail, whether you wanted the Republican Party to succeed or fail, if you control what people see and hear, then that is the real power right there.
As you know, I'm still in our Southern Command, and I'm only about 2 hours from the Everglades. And I know what you're thinking, where's he going with this one? But I'm only a couple of hours from the Everglades, and as you probably also know, the Everglades have been infested with pythons. And there's two kinds of pythons, primarily. There's one that's a little bit more docile, and it's larger. But there's another one that's more aggressive, but it's smaller. And they normally don't breed. The two are starting to breed. So not only are you getting a non-native species that's a top of the food chain predator invading the Everglades, now it's becoming a super snake. If they breed, the potential is to have a bigger python that is now pissed off the day it comes out of its mother.
But at the end of the day, they're both snakes.
Exactly. But the point is, now that you've got this super hybrid, you've got the Democrat Party and big tech joining in. And
right.
Now you've got a bigger snake and an angrier snake. Who's more angry than Nancy Pelosi?
Oh, nobody. She is the wicked witch.
You know what? I give Leslie Stahl a lot of credit, and it pains me to even say that. But you got to call him fair if you're going to call him. You got to call balls and strikes. I give her a lot of credit for the 60 Minutes interview. I didn't watch the whole thing because I can't bring myself to watch 60 Minutes, but I saw some snippets. She actually pressed Pelosi, and you should have seen the fire coming out of Pelosi's eyes, that she felt that she was in a safe space of 60 Minutes, and how dare she be challenged, and that she has any bad ideas floating around in her adorable little brain. And it was a sight to watch. Finally, somebody who spent some years in media, finally it was nice to see a major network challenging, which is what they should do, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Chuck Schumer, whether it's McConnell. I don't care if it's your local mayor, if it's your councilman. That's the media's job, to challenge politicians and be our eyes and ears. And finally, she was doing it, and Nancy did not like it.
And how long? That's still on Twitter, by the way, that 6-minute snippet. How long do you think that'll be on there? That's the question.
Yeah. It's going to be considered hate speech because they asked the Speaker of the House a question. I just don't know where you go with this, Justice. I really don't. I don't know where we go with this. I mean, it's been a little bit cathartic to talk about it a little bit, but I just don't understand where this is all going. And I just think the only answer is the people of this country understanding that we both have to win. Both sides of this country have to win where we are right now. And what I mean by that, we both have to enjoy freedom of speech. We both have to enjoy freedom of religion. We both have to be able to enjoy all the things that are available in this country. And when you start supporting suppression of any of those constitutional rights because it helps your side win, man, we've got a big problem. And I think that's where we are right now. Much of what I'm seeing on social media, and frankly from some people that I consider level-headed, is get Trump any cost necessary. And even so much that if the country crumbles, if at least we got Trump, I said it earlier, it's one of those things, they're willing to sink the boat that they are on as long as Trump is on that boat too. That's crazy to me. Crazy.
Yeah. As you said before, though, sooner or later, they're going to run out of conservatives, and then they will eat their own. That's just the way it happens. It will just keep going and going. And it's all fine and dandy right now. But someday, you're going to get turned on. You may be the last person, but they will keep consuming until they finally come for you. Now, actually, somebody just sent me this. I was reading it as you were talking. It's kind of funny. Have you ever read what Twitter's mission statement is?
I have not. I have not.
This is a mission statement right from their investor contact facts. The mission we serve as Twitter Incorporated is to give everyone the power to create and share ideas and information instantly without barriers. Our business and revenue will always follow that mission in ways to improve and do not detract from a free and global conversation. That is directly from Twitter's facts on their investor page. So, I might have to say they strayed a little bit from their mission statement, or it's changed. It's changed, and we don't know about it. So, when all this started going down, I started looking for other avenues for the halls of justice to, because eventually they're going to come and they're going to feed on us, and we're going to be blocked. So I started looking for other avenues, and first I went to Parler. And I encouraged all the listeners to go sign up for a Parler account. The very day I signed up for a Parler account, not even 6 hours later, it was pulled from the Android Play Store, so you couldn't get it there. Without warning, Android did this. Google did it. The very next day, Apple pulled theirs. They at least gave 24 hours warning that we're going to pull it from the Apple Store. So I started looking for alternatives, went to Parler. They got shut down, an interesting story if people don't know. So when you have a website, when you have a web service, you have to have a hosting service, right? So Halls of Justice pays somebody to host our service. What that means is we rent web space, basically, is what it means. So we have our stuff here. Our stuff is uploaded to their servers in the cloud somewhere where other people can go and pull it and listen to it. Okay, so Parler basically did the same thing with with Amazon's web service. Well, Google pulled them, Apple pulled them, and then Amazon says, you know what? We're not going to let you use our servers anymore. So what that effectively did was that killed Parler. One of the only conservative places that you could go and not be censored was shut down in less than 2 days. Now Parler is saying that because Google won't let them in their Play Store, Apple won't let them in their store, nobody else wants to host their service because even though you could still put them on their phone if you know how to do APKs, if you know how to do a few other things, you could have still used them if they could have a web hosting service. But nobody now wants to host their service because they're not in the Play Stores. If they're not in the Play Stores, they're not generating the revenue of people going to the Play Stores and getting the downloads. That's why none of the big people want to host them right now. Luckily, or unluckily, I don't know. So today, Parler filed a suit against Amazon. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. One of them was a breach of contract. So that was one of their issues was breach of contract. So that's just strictly a contract issue. And they had a couple other charges. And again, I'm sure they're looking for someone else to host their stuff. I just don't know how long the suit will take to go through, if they even win it. So then I went on to another similar service called Gab, G-A-B. And for 2 days now, I've been unable to get past the sign-up screen because their servers are just blown up with the traffic now since conservatives are trying to go from place to place until they can find somewhere that they can, I don't know, call home, somewhere that the giant big tech people can't get to them. But one by one, all these services are getting shut down. And again, you're being limited. Everybody's being limited as to what they can see and what they can't see, and what they can say and what they can't say. So I don't know where we go from here. I don't know if Parler will win their suit. I hear there's talk of suits being filed against Twitter, PayPal. Okay, so PayPal, and they own Venmo. So if you say I don't use PayPal, I use Venmo, well, you're giving your money to the same people. Venmo has a little less fees, but it's the same company. So some of these big conservative sites that charge subscription fees or sell merch have been blocking their conservative hosts from using PayPal or Venmo. So it's not only just these websites. Now we're starting to get to the second tier where, I had a subscription to hear John and Dan talk about conservative stuff, and I paid $4 a month every month through a monthly subscription on PayPal. Well, all of a sudden, PayPal's not taking their payments anymore. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying the rug is being pulled out. Earl Pitts used to say, "Wake up, America." And as cliched, as hillbilly, as strange as that sounds, we need to wake up, America.
So in essence, what you have is you are free to watch any channel, television station that you want. And let's just say WJTS is the station that I want, and you are the owner of WJTS. And they're going to put WJTS on, and there's content on there that I want to watch and you want to provide. Dish Network says we're not going to carry it. DirecTV says we're not going to carry it. All the cable companies say we're not going to carry it. And the FCC won't give you a transmitter, and you're not allowed to go on the internet. But you can broadcast anything you want. I can listen and participate and hear anything I want. Now let's just say, take it a step further. This isn't just one channel. This is every channel that you will find this type of information. It's going to get so bad that Fox News is going to be considered leftist. Because that's how crazy that it's starting to get right now. Have you ever seen I know you're a big culture guy. Have you ever seen the musical We Will Rock You?
No, but I have heard the song.
Okay, it is actually based on the song. It's based on the music of Queen. Okay, so it's basically set like a couple hundred years in the future, and planet Earth has been renamed Planet Mall, and it's controlled by Global Soft Corporation. And Global Soft is headed by Sinister Killer Queen, and he's banned all non-computer generated music. So no more guitars, no more drums, no more pianos. All music had to be programmed from a computer. Life as we know it is no longer there. Everything is controlled by big tech company Global Soft. Sounds very similar to another company, but Global Soft is what they called it. And I actually saw this, and it was a tremendous musical. If you ever get a chance to see it, not only was it entertaining and it had the music of Queen, but it also made a fantastic point. And basically all of the people were programmed not to question why there wasn't any music that could be created anymore. All their music had to come from a computer. It wasn't even questioned. You were just programmed to accept that. And isn't that where we're kind of going right now? We're going to be told what we can hear, what we can listen to, what we can believe. And the only way they saved this is they found something called a video tape. Are you familiar with what a video tape is?
No, you got to explain that one to me.
That is actually a videotape. But they didn't even know how to pronounce a videotape.
I get it.
And on this on the Video Tape was a copy of Queen performing Bohemian Rhapsody. So what it ultimately comes to bring this kind of full circle is they find the song and they want to play it, and it brings people, it exposes people to actual real music and not computer generated. And of course that brings everybody to fight back against global soft. But it really is kind of what we're talking about right now, where big tech is going to take over and just control everything that we do, everything that we're exposed to, and everything that we think. And we were talking a little bit ago about the 230C, and just so people understand what a 230C is, it basically prevents big tech or social media companies from being sued for content that's on their website. And I actually looked up the verbiage that's in there. It says no provider or user, meaning Facebook or like on a Facebook or Twitter, but no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. So in easy language, Facebook is not liable with what the fat man puts on there because they are not the publisher. When you start telling the fat man when he can and cannot put on there, hello, you are now a publisher, and now you are open to be sued and liable for that information. So if I put on Facebook that I saw Justus, wearing a negligee and carrying a Biden-Harris banner around, and that offended you, and you felt that harmed you, you could sue me. And if it wasn't accurate information, if that never happened and I just made it up, you would be liable. This 230C prevents Facebook and Twitter from being sued in a scenario like that. And if they lose that, or they would have lost that, it would have changed everything. And now that the Democrats are going to be in control of the House and Senate and the presidency, they don't have to have that fear of losing the 230C protection. And that's why they can shut down all of these things. That's why they can shut down access of the president to their websites. They can shut down other conservative voices because they're acting as a publisher, but they'll never get called out on it. And unless someone wants to find the Video Tape and bring us back to reality, we're going to be stuck being controlled by global soft.
Yeah, and I know you're down there having fun. You've probably seen this too. So CNN, and now they've even got some Democrats on board. They've gone to the 6 big television providers, DirecTV, Dish, Spectrum, Time Warner, whatever they are. And they're actually trying to get stations like Fox News, Newsmax, and One America News taken off. Deplatformed is what they call it, because they don't think that their claim is that dishonest companies that profit off of disinformation and conspiracies need to be deplatformed. So CNN and a handful of Democrats are actually making this push, like you were just like that musical predicted the future. So not only are they wanting to limit what you could see online, but they are wanting to limit what you could see broadcast on television. Hopefully, some smarter minds prevail, and this goes nowhere. But could you and I imagine what would happen should they actually be successful in this action? Not only are you limiting what people see, but you're eliminating your competition at the same time. What if I went to any other podcast in the area and found out, and said, hey, YouTube, these people are, profiting off of disinformation, and I had friends that ran YouTube, and they said, okay, and they kicked them off. We're just a small-time thing. But what if this starts happening? You're getting rid of your competition. You're limiting what people see to only what you want them to see and hear. And, again, we're right back to, if this doesn't affect me at the moment, nobody cares about it.
Let's face it, we're all programmed by our environment. Certainly, you have the ability to make freedom of choice, but we're all products of our environment. But there's also a baseline inside every one of us. Just like I say about people breaking into the Capitol. If I was there at the Capitol supporting President Trump and somebody said, hey, we're breaking into the Capitol, let's go, fat man. First of all, I wouldn't fit through the window. But secondly, that's one of the benefits. But I wouldn't break into the Capitol. I wouldn't do that. I'm not programmed to think that way. I don't think crime first, questions later. Okay, I'm just not programmed to do that. But if you take away Fox News, love them or hate them. If you take away CNN, love them or hate them. You take away MSNBC, you take away NBC, ABC, New York Times, New York Post, Washington Times, go on and on and on. Take away these media outlets where we don't have any uncomfortable information coming into our environment. And by uncomfortable, I mean stuff that you don't agree with. If we don't have any exposure to stuff we don't agree with, stuff that makes us a little uncomfortable, stuff that we don't know enough about, how are we ever going to learn? How are we ever going to appreciate that there is a different viewpoint than what I have? We can't have one person rule. We can't have one entity rule. We can't have somebody, and this can be an entity like big tech, or it can be an individual like the President of the United States, making decisions for everybody. Let's go back in time 4 years ago. What if when Trump won the presidency, and I know some people on the liberal side will say he did this, but what if when he won the Trump presidency, Congress was completely eliminated, state governors eliminated, state legislators gone, local mayors gone. All you had was Donald Trump. And this question is specifically to liberal people. What would you have thought if it wasn't your guy at the top of the food chain this time? It was, quote, our guy, or it was the conservative guy or the Republican guy who could just sit there and go, you're a winner, you're a loser, you get the good stuff, you get the garbage. And you had to live with it. That's kind of where we're going right now. And I'm not even looking at, again, I'm not looking at that from a Republican standpoint. I'm looking at that from an American standpoint. I don't want, if you offered me right now, Batman, tell you what we'll do. All you got to do is say yes, and we'll eliminate the House and Senate. We'll get rid of Biden and Harris, and Trump will be president for life. I would have two words for you. Hell no. I don't want that America. I don't want that America where it's one thing, where it's only one party, even if it's my party, even if it's my beliefs. If they gave me that position and said, look, we'll put you in the White House, you get to decide everything. Every important decision is going to be exactly what the fat man wants. I don't want it, because no one should have that much power. No one.
Yeah, I agree. So I also agree we should have term limits. I also agree that if Congress wants a raise, they shouldn't get to vote on their own raise. That should be voted on by us. And I agree that, it's too many people with too much power are in the game for too long. It's just the way it is. Once you can be a president for 4 years, for 8 years, but then you're done. But you could be in Congress for life. You could be a career there. And if you're making more than $1 million a year doing that job, then you should have to open your tax records to exactly where that money came from. So those are just a few of my beliefs. We're about to hit the magic hour. There's so many more places we could go. You got some final thoughts here before we leave everybody wanting more?
Yeah, I have always been one of those people that's wanted term limits. But here's the other thing that I think about with term limits, because I always try to look at things from weird perspectives. And going back, I'm only 2 hours away from the Everglades. If I go into the Everglades and I kill one of those snakes, another one's coming in right behind it. So there is some validity to the term limit, because when you're there so long, people have the easy access to you, because it's almost like its own factory. I need this vote, I got to make this donation, and I'm going to send it to this congressman. Done. It's already in place. But here's the thing: if you kill one snake, And if you vote out or term limit out one congressman or senator, right behind it is going to be another one with their hand out. And they're just going to take the place, and they're going to do the exact same thing and look out for themselves. Just remember, the guys who we all hate because they formed this country, when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they committed treason. They basically signed their death warrants. We need to go back to where we have politicians that have those kind of balls that are willing to do something like that for the good of the country, not the good of their wallets. And until we get there somehow, which I don't know that there's a direction to get there, but until we get there somehow, we are going to teeter on the brink of failure. Remember, the Roman Empire fell. Britain is no longer the world superpower that it used to be. And you can go back throughout histories, and you had so many countries that couldn't fail, that failed.
Yeah. Let's pray that we are not next on that list. Every week I think of things that we're going to talk about, but every week something gets else thrown up that we're going to talk about, so it makes my job easy. So we had to do this one a couple days early just because we felt we couldn't keep it inside anymore. I kept festering, kept getting mad, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with another rousing edition of the Halls of Justice.
You've been listening to The Halls of Justice. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you have a show idea, would like to be a guest, or just want to communicate with a show, email us at hallsofjustice@roadrunner.com. You can also find us on Facebook. Tell all your friends. And we'll see you for a new episode next week of The Halls of Justice.